Dedicated to geeks and nerds, you're listening to Project I Radio, 24/7 Nerdgasm.
Bizarre.
Bizarre.
Bazong. Bazong. Bazong.
Bizarre. 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 Bizarre.
This is Bazong, the bizarre and weird fiction podcast with me, your host, Mr. Farang. Zongers, I am delighted to say that I've been getting a lot of great feedback on the podcast. Y'all out there have been mentioning that you enjoy the show. You've been recommending it to everybody else, and we've had a lot of positive messages about the guests we've had, about the interviews we've had. You're enjoying everybody, and I hope to continue that this week with our next guest. I just finished her book not too long ago, and I was blown away. Now, I have read her stuff in the past, but until I read her latest book, I had to have her on the podcast. So I am happy to present this week the one and only Miss C.V. Hunt. I hope you're as excited as I am to get to hear her. I had a chance to sit down and talk to her and pick at her brain about the book she's written and about her approach and her darker sort of side. And we even touched on females in bizarre a little bit, something we've brought up in the past. And we had a chance to pick the female mind about that. So, with that in mind, let's continue on to the Bazong interview with C.V. Hunt. I'd like to welcome to the Bazong podcast, again for the first time. That's an inside joke, and you Zongers won't get it, but I assure you, we're starting over again. I'd like to welcome a person who I hope needs no introduction whatsoever, because all I do is hear about our next guest constantly. She seems a very important part of the Bizarro scene. Please welcome to Bazong, the one and only Miss C.V. Hunt.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on. Now, I want to get this right out of the way because it feels a little awkward calling you CV all the time. What is the professional decorum? Do you prefer to be called CV? Do you like to be called Carrie? That's your real name?
Yeah, I totally tell people just to call me Carrie. It's just easier. It rolls off the tongue a little bit better than CV.
So, why did you prefer to be published as CV?
I wanted to go gender neutral on my pseudonym, because I do kind of write male and female perspective, so.
Is that like a sort of a marketing technique?
Kinda, sorta. It was a weird suggestion from a friend because the very first thing I had ever written, and it wasn't even published or anything, I was just handing it to family members. And it was first-person male perspective, and my sister-in-law actually was just like, hey, have you ever thought about, just using initials? That way it's not really confusing that a girl wrote, like, from a guy's perspective. And I was like, yeah, maybe that might be a better idea.
That's interesting. I've heard that come up, not necessarily in the Bizarro world, but, in horror especially, I hear it a lot, where women horror writers kind of use that weird initial or kind of a unisex sort of a name.
Yes, yeah, it does. There seems to be, like, sometimes, I see that a lot in, like forums and chat boards and talking to other female writers that they say, some of them that have very female names are like, I kind of wish I would have done this, used like either a pseudonym, initials, or gender neutral name, because it seems like, I don't know, they say they get overlooked, I don't know what the problem is there. Everybody's just writing, and I don't think it really, to me, definitely doesn't matter when I'm reading a book whether the person is male or female or anything, so I don't understand why. It seems to be, kind of a thing that's brought up, but
it's just something you started out with, and now you're just rolling with it, right?
Yeah, I'm just rolling with it at this point.
On our first episode, I had Danger Slater here, who I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yes,
And,
I've met Danger.
We discussed at one point about it seems like there's a rise in the women who are being presented in the bizarre fiction. I don't know if that's true or it's just some kind of weird observation I have that's not necessarily true, but it does seem like as of late there are a lot more females on the scene, and it kind of strikes me as weird given the material of Bizarro. Bizarro always seems to me something like that would have just appeal more to males. How do you see the Bizarro scene from your point of view?
I've noticed, I think it was last year or something like that. What was it? Not this last BizarroCon, but the BizarroCon before, I wasn't able to attend, and I remember seeing people posting pictures, and I'm like, wow, there are a lot of females there this year, because the first year that I went, it did not seem to be that way. I mean, there were females there, but as far as like the ratio, it seemed like there was a lot more. But like, yeah, I've seen, I guess I just never realized how many female writers are in the Bizarro community until I don't know exactly how long ago it was, but somebody was saying that it wasn't very female friendly or oriented or something like that. And then somebody actually listed every female author, and I was just like, there are a lot of female authors that write Bizarro, a lot more than, for some reason, when you see that list and you see those numbers, you're just like, that's way more than, when you see it at a broad spectrum with everybody's name on it and stuff.
Yeah, I kind of think it's just, from my perspective, it just seems like maybe too often, Bizarro is kind of looked at as like the dick joke kind of genre. And
yeah, I can get that. Yeah, it's like it does seem like I grew up in a very small rural town, Midwest, very conservative type area. And most of my friends, through high school and stuff, we were watching, horror movies and stuff like that. But it just seemed like my female friends were just not into that, But it seems like, yeah, that's what I kind of love about like the writing community and stuff, is that I have found, made a lot of friends and writer friends, male and female, and it's just like, wow, there are other girls out there that are kind of into weird shit like me, so it's been kind of nice.
It really is cool to see the women and to realize, like I said, it was my experience. It seemed like as of late there's been an uptick, but if you really look at it, like you said, they've been earlier. I mean, for God's sakes, Rose O'Keefe that's where you start, right?
Yes.
So
yeah. She is Bizarro to me. It is like, she is, she is the godmother of Bizarro. So
yeah, it's the matron, as it were. So it's sort of weird to think that way, but if you really look at it, I mean, the women have been there all along. How did you come to Bizarro?
When I first started writing, I really didn't even know what I wanted to write. And then, was writing whatever to kind of fill time. And, it was, just getting online, getting on like Goodreads community, and just, the whole book recommendation things on there where you're just like, well, if you like this book, you should check out that book. And, I ended up, stumbling into like Steve Lowe, I think was probably the first Bizarro that I read. And then, Anderson Prunty. And, just it kept snowballing after that, just coming across more and more stuff. And I'm just like, wow, this is way different, because I was just, originally, I mean, I read all over the place, but it was just like the first time that I was just like, oh, wow, like there's like this weird, surreal, like horror type stuff that is, I've never really experienced before.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, before we delve more specifically into your works, from what I have read of you, I was kind of wondering if you even identify what you write specifically as Bizarro, because, it's there, but you have your stuff is dark, tends to be dark.
Yeah.
Are you writing consciously as Bizarro, or you're just what's your
I
approach?
kind of always feel like because like I read Bizarro and I'm like, this is way more bizarre than my stuff, I guess mine has like Bizarro elements to it throughout, but it's not real heavy on it. So it's kind of hard to tell people. It's just like it's more, I don't know, I always say like, I don't know, it's real hard to put a label on it when you're looking at it yourself, but a lot of times I'll tell people like it's like dark surreal fantasy or something like that, or dark surreal horror, because some of it's more horror based, some of it's more like fantasy based or whatever. But yeah, it's I take it. Some people call me a horror writer, some people call me a Bizarro writer. It's just like I just write. I don't know what I write. It's kind of messed up and dark, but check it out,
Oh, totally. It really is sort of hard for me to pinpoint when I read you. You don't spring off the page as a Bizarro, but like you said, there's elements there.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was curious to how you see your own writing.
Yeah.
To be more specific on that, let's jump into some of your books.
Okay.
The first one that comes to mind is the first one I read, and it was the first one I read because it had a lot of buzz when it first came out. Everything I saw when it first came out in Bizarro circles was everybody's, you got to read Baby Hater, Baby Hater, Baby Hater, Baby Hater. Everybody seemed to be talking about it. So I went and picked it up, and it was a great book, and it was a fun read, but it was also like a whoa,
Yeah.
sort of take a step back. So, I mean, Baby Hater is sort of what the title suggests. It's a 30-something woman who really takes exception with cute babies and with the mothers who kind of flaunt them and everything, and she sort of acts out upon that exception. What sort of headspace are you in when you write that book?
That book was kind of an inside joke with me and my friends. I just, we would blurt weird things at each other. And one day I said, you make me so mad, I want to punch babies in the face. And then a friend said, you should really write a story about that. So it was combining that with just being childless by choice. It comes as you get older with some weird reactions when meeting people, I mean, so much as like going to the salon and getting your hair cut, and, the casual conversation is, what do you do? Do you have any kids? And when you say no, a lot of times the first reaction is just, oh, I'm sorry. Like there's, you are unable to have them, not that you chose not to have them. But then when you tell them that it's by choice, that you just don't want to have your own children, there's always like this bit of like anger or kind of like a disgust, like there's something mentally wrong with you that you don't want children. So it was just, combining all of those elements into, because it was just my friend saying, you should write this story about somebody who punches babies in the face. And I'm like, what would cause, what would happen, like, why would somebody ever do something like that? So it was just kind of like taking those kind of experiences to a complete extreme that went into writing that book. And I had a lot of fun doing it. Honestly, I remember just laughing 90% of the time while writing it, thinking, oh my God, people are going to like hate this or just rip it to shreds because this is awful. So yeah, I really had fun writing that one.
I got to tell you, I am so relieved to hear you say that is more or less tongue in cheek because reading it truly and honestly, you read that and, it's a story, it's a character, it's fiction, but you kind of walk away from that book going, Jesus Christ, this girl has issues, like, wow, she's really taking her pissed off in this. These babies and mothers and everything. She was really being cathartic with this writing.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the experience you walk away with. So hearing that really, it's just a joke, and everybody be cool is it's a big sigh of relief. I did want to ask you in that sort of vein, is the story Baby Hater, is it really a story about hating babies, or is it a story about hating the mothers of those babies?
I think it's a combination of the two, because it's the baby is the product of the person who thinks that that you're like this disease on society because you don't procreate or can't procreate, So it's just like, here are these people that look down on you because you haven't fulfilled your biological necessity in life, and they have. So here is their product, here is their, legacy or whatever right there in front of you. So it's like a combination of hating the two, but it's like ultimately, in order to get back at the people who are, looking down on you, is to hurt the one thing that they love the most type thing. So it's like, it's a weird deflective mentality behind it, but I think it's like a hate of both. But the biggest punch in the face to take it literally would be to punch the baby. And that would cause like the most, the biggest screw you.
I think what makes that book work so well is I think there's an appeal there that nobody expects. Like, I have kids, so
yeah,
but still, I have those urges out in public with those type of people. Like, I really would like to strangle that kid right now because that mother is just being obnoxious.
Yeah.
I think everybody has that moment several times, more than likely. So it plays out. It's sort of disturbing to read somebody acting out on that, but I think everybody can relate to those urges. I think that's why that book works so well for you. Moving on.
Okay. Sorry.
It's cool. After that, I followed up with a short story collection of yours.
Okay.
Misery and Death and Everything Depressing.
Yes.
Is it fair to say the majority of your bibliography is like short story collections? It seems that way. Or am I just looking at it wrong?
It's
or about 50-50 maybe?
It's probably about 50-50.
It seems like you're into to short stories quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my works aren't exceptionally long. I mean, even like Baby Hater, I think is like 12,000 words. It's short, Yeah. And then I think, most of my other stuff usually ranges around 30 to 40,000 words. So everything's usually kind of shorter, except for like Ritualistic Human Sacrifice is kind of my longest thing. So, but yeah, I kind of tend to go a little bit shorter. I don't like to pad things, and it's just like essentially I'm just writing until I feel like the story's told. So.
Are you writing short things to submit to anthologies or lit magazines type of stuff like that, or is this just your natural way that your stories come out?
It's just a natural way that the stories come out, because it's like I see a lot of anthologies out there, and some of them I'm just like, the theme doesn't quite strike me, so I don't feel like, I mean, ultimately I write because I have a passion for what I'm writing, so it's just like I see a lot of anthologies like, well, that would be a cool anthology, I'd pick it up and read it, but like I don't, I'm not into, I don't feel like I could produce something. So it's I've never really submitted to anthologies. It's just like I just write something, and in A Misery and Death, a lot of that stuff I wrote years ago, and just kind of like, well, I don't know where that's going. I'll just set it aside, because it's like I don't think I could submit that to any anthology or anything. So
yeah, that and after reading it, that struck me after reading Baby Hater, which I mean is dark in and of itself, but it did have that tongue in cheek, probably first and foremost.
Yeah.
But Misery and Death, I think it came across as a much darker collection. It was different than what I was expecting.
Yeah.
And is that more what we get from you?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's because when I was putting that together, I was just like, I think the best way to go about this is just to pick the most literally miserable and depressing stories, because it's like, I think every time when I get done writing something, I was like, man, this thing is so depressing. I don't know who's going to read this. Like, who wants to read a story about this depressing person, or this like miserable, plot? Like, it's like, yeah. So it was just like, okay, but that's like my style. So if I'm going to put a short story collection together, I feel like it just needs to be compiled of those types of stories in order to put like a good, like, okay, I'm going to pick up this short story collection by this author. This should be a good sample of this author. So if I like these types of stories, or I like this writing style or these prose, that means I probably would like maybe their longer works. So like maybe I'll go buy another one of their books and check that out.
How much do you self-publish versus submitting to publishers?
Currently, let's see, I'm trying to think. Well, Baby Hater, I originally self-published that. It's in the short story collection because it's probably one of my most favorite things that I've written. I kind of wanted to highlight it again and give people, and I think it's a good example of how I write and what I write. So it's in with Misery and Death and Everything Depressing, which is through Grindhouse. But right now it's like, I think I have like 4 things that are self-published. But the 3 of the books are a trilogy, which is not really like bizarro or horror. It's more of like a paranormal adventure fantasy thing. And that's where I started out at. It was just like, I know I want to write. I read this stuff off and on. I'm going to try to write this. And then it's just like over time, I've kind of fell into my thing of like what I like. And I know this is what I like to write and stuff like that. So everything else has been mostly published through Oddle and Grindhouse Press.
How do you decide, when you want to put something out for yourself, or when you want to hold something back and shop it into a small publishing market?
I think it just, for me, I overanalyze a lot of things. So I just look at it and I'm just like, how well is this going to do in what aspect, Because it's like, if I'm writing something horror, it's just like, that's more horror based. It's just like, okay, this will probably be better under, like a small press that specializes in something like that. Because then you have that press kind of backing you, that press saying, hey, we've released a new book. Some presses have, hardcore followers that pretty much buy everything from that press, or, at least keep an eye on that press, and if it comes up, they might like it or whatever. Because like doing things, independently, it's tough. It's like, where do I even start? So if I write something, it's just like, well, who does this even follow in for? It's like, I'm not going to write like a sci-fi epic adventure and like submit it to a press that specializes in bizarro, because like they're not, it's not for them. They're not going to be able to market that well. So I think a lot of it just goes, I write, whatever I feel like writing, and then I just decide, it's like, okay, where would this be the best market for it? Is this something that doesn't really fit into a small press, that I want to submit to? Then, ultimately I have to look at it, doing it like independently, and then doing it that way. It's just like, yeah, it's kind of like just throwing rocks down a hallway or something, because it's just like, I know this isn't like a specialty thing. This is just this random thing. And so you're just kind of advertising yourself, which is really hard to do.
Now you have several works out with Grindhouse, and it's kind of weird. The material they have is really that dark and nearly horror cultish kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but they are sort of. I mean, when you read the list of authors, including yourself, they kind of read also like a who's who of Bizarro authors. Like,
yeah, a little.
What are they? Are they presenting themselves as an aspect of Bizarro, or are they just really trying to be this dark cult type of a publisher?
I think it's with that, it's kind of like that love of horror and how horror influences how people write, So, yeah, I don't know if so much as like, wanting to build like a cult following, but I think it is definitely for those people that are really into those like weird, sleazy, dark, transgressive, like 70s grindhouse films, It's like the people that are looking for that kind of thing. I think that's kind of who they're trying to reach out to, So, yeah, I'm not real sure, like, as far as like, I don't know what I'm saying. But yeah, it's, yeah, I think they are, because it is, like, if you look at all the work under Grindhouse, it's like there is no one specific, but it all is just this very dark or kind of transgressive type writing.
And is that like the press that you just gravitate towards? You feel like that's where you best belong?
I would say, yeah, like probably like 75% of the time I would say, yeah, this is, and I look at stuff objectively too, because like when I wrote Ritualistic Human Sacrifice, there were no questions about it. I was like, this is Grindhouse, like this is totally a Grindhouse book. But then, there's like, Thanks for Ruining My Life. I'm like, not so much, so Autolotl has like a kind of like an open forum. There is that aspects of like weird and dark, but it isn't like over the top. So
yeah, that was what I was going to ask you. I'm not completely familiar with Autolotl. They're based like an imprint of Grindhouse. Is that how that works?
Yes, I think Grindhouse might be an imprint of Autolotl. I'm not. It's one or the other. And yeah, Autolotl does more like, I want to say absurd. Yeah,
Okay.
that would be a great word for it. Just kind of like dark and absurd, but not crazy over the top. So
Gotcha. Less horror to it, I guess.
yeah, I guess that would be the best way to explain it.
And you're published on both, obviously.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We've been talking, and you keep bringing it up, and I've been holding back. But because
it's the one question on everybody's mind right now.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Maybe, I don't know.
Ritualistic Human Sacrifice. I held it back because we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
My God, what an exceptional story you wrote with Ritualistic Human Sacrifice. The first thing that struck me reading that, and this is you mentioned earlier, you do this often, but it's the first time I read you doing it, is the male point of view, the male perspective, and how you nailed it. You nailed like the deep inner psyche type male thinking. What do you do to get to that point of view?
It's really bizarre. I actually have to say that book, I have gotten more messages from other authors, readers, friends, ex-coworkers, everybody, that basically that's what they say. They're like, I don't know how you did it, but you pretty much nailed this character, like the male character, to a T. I think with that book, I think it was like the weirdest perfect storm, because like I was kind of tomboyish growing up. Most of my friends were guys. It always seems like in work instances and stuff like that, I hang around. I have like, I don't know. I hate to break it down to be like male, female, or anything like that, but it's just like I ultimately, most of my friends are men, and they always say that you're just one of the guys. So I just felt like I kind of channeled that. And then ultimately I'm sitting there, writing the thing, and I'm just like, okay, what would one of my guy friends do or say in this instance? What would they think, but not actually really say? Because ultimately you do have conversations. It's like, oh man, well, this happened. I did this, but oh yeah, I just really wanted to say this, and it's just like, but I didn't. And it was like all of that kind of like channeled into that character when writing it.
There's a writer I read often. I love his work. His name is Chad Colchin. I don't know if you're familiar with his work. Average American Male. And
oh yes, I have
actually
read that in the sequel, Average American Marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, this is exactly like, but he's a guy.
Yes.
And he writes things that guys would be afraid to admit that they think in the privacy of their own mind,
Yes.
And he puts it all on paper, and I get blown away by that level of honesty.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a guy. Now I'm reading you, and I'm like, it's Chad Colchin again. You are putting this very honest, deep thinking male honesty on the page, but you're female. So that's where I'm blown away by, like, yes, all right, you got guy friends, that's beautiful. I got women friends. It doesn't mean I'm going to be able to dig that deep into the female mind. Is there research? Do you have to like pull one of your guy friends aside and go like, dude, when you're like in the room by yourself looking at porn, like, what do you like? What is you know what I mean? Is there?
What are you thinking? And
is this just what your experiences is? Do you actually do some sort of quote unquote research to dig deeper, or are you just tapped into something naturally?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't really. I would say I don't really do deep research, but I will not name names, but I do have someone that I was, a couple people, male, that I'm just like, what would this person like, and ultimately like projecting what I think they would do. Like not saying that that's exactly what they do. Like I didn't was like, hey dude, like when you're on Pornhub, like what are you searching for? Like what are you doing? And anything like that. But it is just like, okay, this is just what I imagine that they do, or what they think, or anything like that. So, I think I'm not a really shy or an embarrassed person, but I think I would have a hard time asking a man about his masturbatory habits. I don't know. Yeah. So it's just, just kind of projecting, what I would think they were thinking or doing or same with like social situations and the people around them and relationships and stuff like that.
I'm just so blown away by what you accomplished just on that feat alone. But still, it's also a book you read, and the protagonist you write first of all from the first person point of view, and it comes across like, you're getting his perspective, and yet he still comes across as a dick.
Yes,
for the most part. But then there's also those parts where like, oh, maybe he's not a dick, and maybe I got this all wrong. And I found myself in a tug of war while reading this story. Sometimes I think overall he just comes across as a dick.
Yeah.
But at points you're like, you really have to. Oh, maybe he's not a dick. Maybe this chick really is like just driving him nuts. Like what were you headed for? Were you headed for that ambiguity of he's a dick, he's not a dick, or are you just how are you trying to present him?
I ultimately kind of always struggle, and with this character, I did the no I didn't hold it back when writing. I love to create characters that you love to hate and you hate to love. You're just like, oh, I hate this person, but like, I kind of want to see them get out of it, like, I like to create characters that, you're not quite sure how you should feel about the actual protagonist, but you're there, you're along for the ride, like you have to like see what the hell they're going to do, or, how are they going to get themselves out of this situation, or how they'll react to what's going on around them.
Yeah, the ambiguity of him is it's really beautiful. It really just drags you through the story, and not only do you want to see where it ends, but you're like, you just want to see, is this guy a dick, or is he redemptive? Like, is he missing the point? Type of thing.
Yeah,
it was incredible the way to read that, and to go back to compare it to somebody like Chad Colchin, the average American male, like. I think in the end with him, he writes as the biggest male dick possible, and he wants that to be the end result. I think his characters are, they're just dicks, and he's just putting that forward. And I think with you, not so much. I think it felt like you were playing with that ambiguity hard. At least that's how the story reads.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I just, because like, especially with something like that that's more horror based, I always say, for me, a good horror story has that element of like suspense, whether it is like, the suspense of the conflict at the end or whatever, or yeah, so like there is that suspense of like, is this guy really like a jerk, or is he just finally going to see that he is a jerk and get over it, and move on, or, so there is that suspense of like, what is going on with this character, and is it going to change or get any better type thing. Yeah.
And to compare it to something else too, something else that struck me, and it didn't even strike me until well past like halfway through the book, the aspect of, I started comparing it to a movie that I recently seen. Have you seen Spring?
Oh, I'm trying to think. My memory's so terrible. I'm trying to. I don't think that I have.
Spring takes place in Italy. It was shot. It was kind of like an Indian movie. It takes place in Italy, and it plays itself out like a romance story, like any kind of romance kind of movie you see, and then. About halfway through the movie, all of a sudden, the female character in the movie, all of a sudden, a tentacle comes up behind her head.
Oh, yeah. No, I have not seen that. I think somebody had maybe interviewed the director or something, but I don't think I've actually seen the movie.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie. And like I said, it plays out like it's just a romance movie, and then all of a sudden, this weird supernatural element gets thrown into it, and the female's sort of a monster. But it doesn't. It sort of doesn't play out as a horror movie. It plays out as a romance with just this sort of a side of a monster feel to it. And I had the same sort of reaction to ritualistic human sacrifice. There's a supernatural element to it, but I don't think that's what drives the story. And it's almost tertiary, not even secondary. It's almost tertiary to the story.
Yeah, it's real strange because like I kind of, like I said, I just overanalyze things, and writing that was definitely one of the ones where I'm just like, I kind of just want to start writing this like very normal, like it's very normal, set in everyday life. Everything that's happening, nothing like supernatural or horror related happening, and then just kind of like put touches and get, a little bit stranger what's going on here, and just, by the third part, it just all kind of gets smacked in the face with it, and it just doesn't stop. So yeah, I could see where, definitely where it just starts out very, very, very normal everyday life with this just dickhead of a character, and just like, yeah, eventually it's just like, whoa, what is going on here?
Yeah, it was. Oh man, there's so many layers to the technical aspect of what the story is. I love the book, and everybody should read it. You gave it out for free for like about a week, right? That's how I came to it.
Yeah, I always like to do every year for Valentine's Day. I do my anti-Valentine's Day sale, since my stories are not about anything compassionate or love. Yeah, usually I pick one book and make it free on Kindle for like 5 days over like the Valentine's holiday, and that was the book that I picked this year.
Well, you failed because I love the book, and I'm going to ask it out next year for Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
you did a superb job, and I would like to implore everybody, if you got it for free. I mean, if you don't like it, there's something wrong with your brain. but my intention is you gave that to me for free. I love the book. I'm going to make sure I go buy and put money down on some of your other stuff. Well,
thank you. That's like the
idea.
biggest compliment, I can get. It's just, if you like something and you keep coming back. I mean, even just saying I really liked it, that's enough for me.
Now, we set up this interview about 2 weeks ago. I'd say we agreed to interview, and as chance would happen, about a week ago, I had one of our listeners contact me. He goes, "You mentioned like you would take requests for people to interview, and I really like you to reach out to CV Hunt to interview her." And I said, "Well, funny you should mention that because we have in principle an agreement to interview."
Oh wow!
So you've come requested.
That's shocking to me. I don't.
That's awesome. Wow. Now this gentleman, his name is Russell Holbrook. He works for a small bookstore in Atlanta, and he needed to hear from you. He told me that he really enjoyed. He sought out every YouTube video of you doing readings, and I was like, oh, that's a thing. So I went and sought out your readings. It's something. There's several videos you do in readings. It's sort of weird. I feel weird about the readings thing. How do you feel that works for you as an author doing these readings?
God, actually, I hate doing readings. I'm good in social settings around people. I love talking to other writers and fans and stuff like that. But I'm just generally a very nervous person, and it makes me so nervous to read. I mean, I love readings. I like to see, because, it's the inflection. A lot of things, it is inflection. It's the way you read it. It's the way, the person interprets what you're reading type thing. Because, I could sit down and read a book. My perfect example would just be like American Psycho. Love the book. I have the audiobook too, which is by a narrator that is not the author, and his reading, the thing is fantastic and entertaining. But then I've seen Bret Easton Ellis read things, and I'm just like, that is not how I interpret it, because he reads very quickly, and it just feels like you're just being punched in the face with the words, but it's like, yeah, I think it's great for like fans and stuff to actually, because like I do personally like to see authors read their stuff, because it's like you kind of feel like where it's coming from or what they were, trying to get across to you when they're actually reading it and putting their inflection on their own words type stuff. But like personally, I just I've never done good with. I have stage fright like mad. I hate doing it, but ultimately I think that there's probably somebody out there that's kind of the same as me, as they want to see somebody read their own work and see how the author puts it to them versus how they interpret it when they read it or when they're going to read it. Now,
what's your approach when you do a reading? Do you just kind of feel like you just have to to give a straight reading and give it your inflection and what you hear in your head when you write those words down, or do you feel like there's a level of theatricality that has to be added to a reading?
Me, it's just, I just read. I mean, I've been to readings where there is like a performance to it, and stuff. But me, it is just, whenever I read, it's just reading it to whoever is there, how I hear it in my head, and I don't. I think with me, it's just I'm too focused on the reading aspect of it and kind of delivering it how I want it to be delivered to. Some people kind of actually do a performance or something during their reading. It's just like, I would get so lost or confused or something. I'd be stumbling around the room. Somebody help me! No, but it is just like, I just more focus on reading it to them how I heard it in my head while I was writing it, or something along them lines.
How do you decide what sort of passage you're going to pick out to read?
Well, I usually don't like to read the same thing twice, and ultimately I kind of pick the thing that I think people might find more humor in it than anything. I used to say, I'm going to have to do a name drop now. I used to say there was a lot of readings I would do, and Justin Grimble would be there. And he's got a great laugh and a great sense of humor. And it seemed like for a while, every time I was doing a reading, he was there. And I would ultimately pick out something that I would think would make Justin laugh. Because he does have such a great laugh, and I think it is one of those things that's like slightly contagious. So it's like he starts laughing, and other people are like, "Oh, this is supposed to be funny. It's not like completely crazy." So I usually just try not to pick the same thing twice, and then something that I think somebody might find a little bit of humor in it when I read it.
Now, you're from the Dayton, Ohio area, correct?
Yes.
Is there much of a bizarro scene or some kind of scene for what you write there for you to market in, to work in, or do you just find you need to get out to BizarroCon every year to connect?
It's I never want people to think that I live the most depressing life ever. But Dayton just has not much in that way. I mean, I do know a couple local writers. One of them is more just, horror genre. And the other one is more like dark fantasy type stuff. So, do stumble into them periodically for some things, but like it's usually like, what was it, a month ago or something, I did something in Cincinnati, but it was not really a reading, but one of the other local authors here in Dayton was also there. But like in the Dayton area, there's really, as far as like writing and reading events, I've yet to really stumble across any, or I don't know, maybe I'm just in my own little world and I haven't, been invited to anything in the area. Seems to be like a lot of music scene, but like as far as writing and stuff, I don't think there's like a ton that goes on around here. So
do you just sort of seek out BizarroCon out in Portland, or are there other venues you sort of travel to get your name out there?
Yeah, I usually just conventions. This year probably won't be doing like a ton of conventions, but I do like the convention aspect because it's just like it's so concentrated with writers and stuff, and there's a focus there. So usually that's what I do is just conventions, or I've done readings with people that put things together in like Chicago, did one in Wisconsin, and stuff like that. So, it's like periodically it's like, well, there's not a lot going on around here. So, but this thing's going on. It's like, road trip, and just go and do something just to kind of get out and see people and, talk about writing and stuff like that.
Yeah, I totally empathize with you. I'm in New Jersey, and there's a criminal lack of even small bookstores and venues that take chances on the bizarre sort of writing. I'm going to a convention. You're probably familiar with Don Talks Ministries and Jordan Crawl.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be at his CrawlCon coming up, and that's it's a great little oasis of these weird and bizarro people coming together out here on the East Coast, because it's rough to find people to connect with around us.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, there's, in our area, the Midwest, New Jersey, when you brought that up, I was just like, CrawlCon, and there's a scattering of writers on the East Coast, and then on the West Coast, there's that. But in the Midwest, it seems like everything's just so spaced out, because I know William Polly III lives in Lexington, Kentucky, and it's just that's 2.5 hours from here. D. Harlan Wilson lives in Salina, Ohio. I'm hoping I'm getting these places right, which is 2.5 hours. It seems like there is at least 2.5 to 3 hours spaced out between all of us Midwesterners. So it's and I have periodically put little, gatherings together at my place where it's just beer and talking about writing on, some Saturday night. There's an extra bed and some floors to crash on around here. If you guys want to come, just drink beer and bullshit, so do that periodically, just to get some people together that don't have access to a lot of people or things to do in their area.
It really is just cathartic to be able to talk writing with writers face to face. There's just you can't compare to it. So that very opportunity is amazing. Now we're running out of time soon. I got 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
We touched on books that I have read by you, and I'm curious. Outside of Baby Hater and Misery and Death, and of course the amazing Ritualistic Human Sacrifice, you got to go get that if you haven't. What else should I read? But what else are you fond of your own writing that I should check out?
I always say that Other People's Shit seems to be one that people. I don't know what happened. It's just it had been a few years since I had published it, and a friend was just like, oh man, I picked up Other People's Shit and read it, and it was totally not what I thought it was. It's probably more bizarro than any of your stuff, and it just seems like a lot of people. I forget sometimes that I had even published that, so I always try to recommend that to people too. Then there's Hell's Waiting Room. I would say is a little bit more horror-ish, but more psychological. And then let's see. There's How to Kill Yourself is more of it's really short, more like a dark fantasy type thing. But yeah, been telling people, it's just if you haven't picked up Other People's Shit, you should probably look at that if you're really into absurd, weird, surreal stuff, So, and then Thanks for Ruining My Life is kind of more dark fantasy with touches of surreal in it, but there's tons of stuff. You just Google it, or my website has everything. So
yeah, you have a lot of stuff out there. I mean, do you write for a living, or do you work for a living?
Oh, I work for a living. I'm I'm a data entry clerk by day and a wannabe writer by night.
Like everybody else, I haven't found the bizarre writer yet that makes a living off of it.
No, I know.
But it's funny you said Other People's Shit, because that's the one I've been eyeing up, like the drunk girl at the bar. That's the one I'm I think I'm gonna go with that one next.
Yeah.
That one appealed to me the most. What's coming out for you in the future? What can we see from you? What are we gonna see from you in 2016?
I'm hoping. I'm still currently kind of working on a book. It'll probably be more self-published, just because I kind of feel like it's just more, what am I looking for? Like literary fiction, with like a lot of absurdism in it. So I don't feel like it really fits anywhere with anybody. And that one is, called, We Did Everything Wrong. I'm still working on that one, so I can't give like an exact publication date, but I definitely will say that I'm trying to get it published or trying to get everything done and published in 2016 because I always strive to try to publish at least one book a year. It's some weird fetish that I have. So that's definitely hopefully coming out by the end of this year.
I can't wait for that. I'm really finding myself looking forward to everything you write. You know, when I had Danger on the show, I read I Will Rot Without You, and I told him it's going to be the Wonderland Book of the Year award winner. But,
yeah.
I mean, it was an amazing book. But Ritualistic Human Sacrifice, as it stands today, it's probably my second favorite read of the year. And, I mean, I might clump it a little more towards horror, but it's just an outstanding, fantastic book. I hope everybody goes out and checks that book out. It's great.
Oh, and I will definitely say that Danger's book, he has a beautiful prose. I read that book. It is it's very awesome. His writing style makes me envious. He's beautiful prose. That's blurb that, Danger Slater, if you're out there. Beautiful prose.
He's incredible. I had the opportunity. He came back to New Jersey, fellow Jersey writer. He was sitting here face to face with me. I had just finished the book, and I had an opportunity to talk to him about it. And I just, I found myself not interviewing, just telling him how much I loved his book, and he had to react to that. It was a little weird, but it was an amazing book. I hope it does so well this year for him. But on top of that, like everybody should read your book too. You should give him a run for his money.
Oh,
because Ritualistic Human Sacrifice is amazing.
Yeah, it's. I hope more people pick it up and read it. I mean, that's why I put it free. More than anything, it's like I spend time writing something and putting my all into it, and ultimately it comes down to I just want people to pick it up and read it. So yes, that's if you get a chance, if you see it, pick it up.
Carrie CV Hunt.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming and talking with us tonight or today, whenever these people listen to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure, and I wish nothing but great things for you from here on forward.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There it is, Zongers. Another one in the books. Another great interview with CV Hunt. I can't express enough how great her latest book, Ritualistic Human Sacrifice, was. An amazing, amazing book that starts down one road and takes this hard left, and it becomes this other story that is really, really dark and just real nasty, like Edward Lee, Richard Lehman kind of stuff. Great, great stuff. Check her out. Check all her stuff out. This week, Zongers, I'm going to implore you to connect with us. We're getting all this wonderful feedback, like I said at the top of the show, but I want more people to be able to connect with us a lot easier. So, if you're out there listening to Bazong, check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/Bazong. Like us over there. If you're into Twitter, we're on Twitter as well. Check us out at Bazong Podcast on Twitter. And when you see us post new shows, please do us a favor. If you love the show, share it, retweet it. Spread the word. It's going to help not only us, the network, Project iRadio. You got to love it. Don't forget, patreon.com/Project iRadio. Give us $1. $12 a year if you do $1 at a time. It's such a small amount and helps out a great deal keeping this podcast and all the other great podcasts on the network, like Armin Two's Dead Time Podcast, which just won the Project iRadio People's Choice Award for Favorite Podcast 2015. So congratulations to them. Another great show you should be checking out on Project iRadio. But I'm gonna give you a little. If you're gonna give us $12, if you want to do it $1 at a time, I'm gonna give you a little hack. This is a little life hack here, a little Patreon life hack. You want to do your $1 at a time, help out the network. You love all these podcasts on Project iRadio. Here, do this. $12, right? You're gonna commit $12 for the year. Sign up at the $10 level for the first month. You're gonna get an ebook subscription for $10. It includes books and work from all the writers. There's great writers here doing podcasts on Project iRadio. Brian Keene, Kelly Owen, Armand Rosamilia, Mark Tufo, just to name a few. If you sign up at the $10 level for the first month, you're going to get a great ebook subscription from Project iRadio's Patreon account. Then, after you get that, knock it back down to $1 a month for 2 months. It's a 3-month commitment. 1 month at $10, 2 more months at $1. You've fulfilled your $12 commitment to us for the year. Now, hey, maybe you just want to keep going because it's worthwhile. And you just give us $10 for 1 month. It's great. But that's a little life hack. If you're going to do $12, go in at $10 for the first month, and you're going to get the ebook subscription. Knock yourself back. Jess is going to kill me for suggesting this. But it's okay. You want to give $12? It's a great way to give $12. Life hacks right here on Bazong. Patreon.com/Project iRadio. Zongers, our time is up for this week, but we're going to end the show now with some suggestions for you. Other great podcasts to listen to on Project iRadio. Until next week, check out these other shows.
Buttercup of Doom on Project iRadio. I am your host, Kelly Owen. I'm just a girl who writes horror and thriller fiction, talks to bugs, jumps in puddles, and now hosts a weekly podcast full of opinions, advice, and a touch of gypsy wisdom, whether it's current affairs or social media nightmares. Join me, the Buttercup of Doom, Mondays on Project iRadio.
Like things scary? Do you like things loud? Dare to open the pages of the Necrocasticon. Each week we take heavy metal and horror properties and blend them together. The Necrocasticon. Thursday, exclusively on Project iRadio.